As you guys know, it's an election year. You keep hearing that, voting is one of our main ways to gain influence, to have power over our voices. And Kyle, I want to start with you. How as NFL players, as individuals, as a unit, however you want to take it, how do you get players and people and whomever to vote?
I think it just starts by kind of putting it out there and talking about it more. I saw something the other day where somebody said, we need to make voting cool, and that's the world we live in is a social media world, and kind of what's trending, what's cool at the time. And if that's what it takes to get people to vote, then I think that's something that we can capitalize on our platform by just putting our word out there on it, telling people how we register to vote, how we're going to vote, and just kind of making it a thing, and I think younger people and people that look up to us as athletes, they'll follow along in that trend.
Yeah, I know for me, this is going to be my first year voting. And I think for the longest time, what a lot of people actually think is that, this is what I thought, is that I'm just one person. My voice isn't really going to matter. If I go out and vote, it's really not going to make a difference if I do or don't. And so I think I was just being too lazy to really put in the work and start to research different things about politics, about ways I can help in the community, through my vote. And so I think more people need to, just not be lazy about it, to really educate themselves. And that's something that I've really started to hone in on and try to work at, because it is important. And I think obviously if everybody has that same thought that I had at first, where my voice doesn't matter, then that creates a very big group of people. And if all those people go in and really use their platform or use their vote for good, then that's what's going to make real change.
Yeah, I felt the same way as Fred. I always felt like what does my one vote matter? And if I'm not informed on my vote, is that an irresponsible vote? So, but I think just me, that I was being irresponsible, in myself and not educating myself and being able to give an educated vote. So, like Fred, this is going to be my first year voting, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, same. For me, I just taking my time just to kind of educate myself on the candidates and what kind of policies they can, implement in and push for the Black community. So for me, it's going to be my first year actually getting involved, doing my research and voting.
Well, gentlemen, I was glad to see that, but it's never too late and for you to be your first time. And there's so many ways that your platforms that you have that you can affect hundreds, if not thousands of people. If you just, one, I would say join your local NAACP and get into our phone network where you can call. Just imagine what it'd feel if a young man, 18 years old, to get a call from you and one of the phone calls, and you would call the person and encourage them to vote. That's the power that your platform has, and I would encourage you to use it to get out and magnify the vote, because now we need it. We need it more than ever.
Well, here's one thing I want to ask you guys to continue the conversation. Look, it's a presidential election, right? We know who the candidates are. We see and hear from them all the time. But one of the big conversations in light of Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor is holding policemen accountable. The person to do that is district attorneys. Okay, in a lot of places, district attorneys are elected. I think it was UK one talking about learning about the candidates. How much time have you spent learning about the district attorneys, who funds them? Because oftentimes it's police unions that fund them, because the district attorneys typically, or whomever, is not going to punish somebody who lines their pockets to help them win office. But so how important is it, especially in light of what's going on, to find out locally your district attorneys and people like that?
I think it's critical, just me moving forward. I didn't put a lot of emphasis on it, but now that I'm looking and I just see how the whole thing works, for me, it's really big for me just to be able to just diagnose these guys, see their policies, and just to see who's really in it for the improvement of the Black community. And this year, like I said, it's going to be my first year really diagnosing it and understanding the whole dynamics of it.
Yeah, I think when you talk voting, it's so common to just think of the presidential election. I know, just, speaking for myself, that's what I've always thought of. But really, where the most change is made is at the local level, and that's where you want to, look into things like your district attorney, your mayor, other representatives that are local that get voted on in elections. Really is where you can make the most impact.
And being like, I'm from New Jersey. I'm a resident now in Florida, so I'm just kind of getting adapted and learning the candidates down here. But I would like to do more in my state, in my home state of New Jersey.
And it might feel tedious. It might sound tedious to really like sit down and look at these, these candidates and what they're about. But I mean, at the end of the day, this change that we're trying to make is really going to come from really putting the time in and being, thorough in the way we're doing this. Because, for the longest time, like for me, like we've all been talking about, like it just, not that I didn't care about these things. It's just that I was just too lazy to really put the time in to really make sure I'm giving an educated vote, and so now being able to educate myself. And I think that's the key word in everything that's been going on with the protests and everything that's arose from everything that's been going on. I think that's the right word. But it's just really educating yourself, because if you're not educated about what's going on, then you're just going to stand back and be part of the problem. And so really being able to educate and help people understand what's going on, and obviously who we should elect and put in positions of power, I think is very important.
Hey, you guys, I don't think you guys are such beautiful young people. I don't think you really understand the power you have, especially as a collective group. Much like you called me up, just imagine if you just were to put this same call into the local district attorney and ask him some questions wherever you live. 3 or 4 players just from the NFL would call him and say, "We want to know your position." You'd be almost putting them on notice that you are paying attention. See, and if you get on your platforms, you get on your social media, all the contacts and all the people you went to school with, all the effects you have down the line, you would change this nation. This nation's going to change for the betterment for you guys and for your kids. We're counting on you, the young soldiers. All I'm doing now is trying to hold the door open for the young people like you to come on in there and make the changes that are the systemic racism, structural racism that we've had for so long. So I'm encouraging you to use your platform. As an NFL player, 4 or 5 of you called your district attorney in New Jersey, you call him up, he's going to take time in his day to get on your calendar.
I'm really excited right now because for the longest, we've been asking as athletes, like, what can we do? Because we're not politicians, you know what I mean? So it's very encouraging to hear an actual orientation of where we can start and where the foundation can be, because we've been here before. Let's be honest with you. We've been here before in these times, and so many times nothing happens. We get very emotional. In history, that's when you really don't pinpoint what's really going on and make real changes, that history will repeat itself. So I feel like at the end of the day, as athletes, we understand now. We have no more excuses for not understanding this, because for so long we kind of just would let it go politically. Because I know during Ferguson, that was right down the street from me in Kansas City, and I don't think we did much of nothing to help and use our stage and use our voices. So I feel like we really have to confront the issues as athletes and understand that we ain't done enough. And I'm just excited to hear actual orientation where we can start, and as far as making those phone calls and doing what we got to do to make sure that history don't repeat itself.
Well, D, I'm gonna push on you, man, because you're right there in the ham, right? So you got a black mayor right there, right? That young brother could use your support. Now you get 2 or 3 players from down there, and just the fact that y'all go down there, everybody goes to Birmingham for surgery, right? So there's always some athletes coming through there. So y'all go down there, talk to him, and stand with that mayor right now as we have major gentrification going on in downtown Birmingham, right? And you know how the west side was set up, this coming all over and displacing the people in mass numbers. So you have so many different platforms, D, and I want to encourage you, just go down there. You walk down through Kelly Ingram Park, young people are going to come out to see you, and they're going to come out to hear you. Not just how you made it, but tell them you're here to stand with them to change it. Because right there in Kelly Ingram Park is that historical scene where we see the kids getting sprayed with water hoses and the dogs getting let loose on them. So you have the history, as you mentioned, right there to back you up what young people did. So I encourage you, with that young mayor you got and the people there and the churches, you guys could turn Birmingham back on its tracks, man.
Yeah, and I forget, I think, Fred, I think it was you who said, what does my vote mean? In the last presidential election, I think Michigan was won by 11,000 votes. And more than 100,000 people of color in Detroit alone did not vote. Okay? There's several states. K1, you're down in South Florida. The people of color who did not come out to vote, I think, was over 230,000 of registered voters. The presidential election was decided by less than 100,000 votes. Or something like that in that state. So your vote matters. But again, the local issues are important. And Reverend Moore, I have a question for you, because we have people here in California, in Alabama, and in New York, and in Florida. They all play in Northern California. How can you help them with the absentee balloting or something like that? Because they're going to be up in the Bay when the election takes place. How can you help them understand that? And then how can you help them tell other people how to deal with absentee balloting?
Well, I think it'd be wonderful if we did even a PSA or something like that. And I'm talking with the local company here to see if we can get them to sponsor, to do something and find a venue so they can speak to their people. Even though I'm here playing in San Francisco or Santa Clara, even though I'm here playing, my heart is still with you back home. And I want to let you know it's important that I'm here in Santa Clara voting for Alabama. I'm voting for New Jersey. I'm participating. You too can participate in something to that format. So whatever it is, we have to look at the different rules and laws and make sure you have the absentee ballot on time. You guys can do it. And since you brought that up, here in California, one of our big measures that I'm pushing right now is ACA 6. ACA 6 will take on the California Constitution that disallowed anybody that was on parole or had felonies to vote. So if we get ACA 6 passed, they will now be reestablished and allowed to vote in this country. I mean, in this country, in our elections. And that's what Florida did, K1, when they were down in Florida. Now we got all those people who 4 years ago couldn't vote. They have a lot of people now that can vote. And we must do everything in our power to teach our people, everybody as American citizens, how to vote. So Kyle, I'll encourage you to write home and get your ballot, get it sent here to your P.O. box or wherever you guys get your mail, and fill it out. Show yourself actually filling it out and sending it in, and let people know you can do it. So we have to be the encouragement. We have to be the change that we want the world to see.
Yeah, well, and by the way, you heard the Reverend talk about in Florida, they got the law changed so formerly incarcerated felons could vote. The Players Coalition led that change. Anquan Boldin and that group led the legislative policy change down there. So that does go to show you the influence. Well, let's kind of go on. I just want to find out from you guys. You've been remote. You haven't been around each other, right? What types of conversations are you having with each other or with pockets of whoever you hang out with on a team, whatever, about what's going on in the world and what you guys can try to do to make a change? And Dee, I'll start with you. I don't know if you spoke to anybody or whatever, but I mean, it seems like everybody's wanting to do something. What types of conversation have you had amongst yourselves?
Well, I've had good conversation and angry conversation, a bunch of emotions, of course, different emotions. I think the biggest thing though is I talk to my mom all the time. She's actually in the hospital right now, but she's doing good. But we talk about the times that we're in right now. It's actually a beautiful time because you're actually starting to see a line being drawn, and it's either you're for it or you're against it. And if you're silent, you are the enemy. And that's it's a beautiful time to be in right now because you're starting to see a lot of people or organizations actually be exposed. And to what the actual cause has been is we've kind of let this thing kind of go on. I keep saying we've been here before. And half of the reason is because nothing is really done. No change is really being made. And we're at a beautiful time right now. Everyone, if you're silent right now, you're actually starting to be called out. And those are the conversations that I'm having. And also, what can we do? What can we actually do in our household to make sure? And this is a tough conversation. What can we do to make sure that our kids are safe? Because I have a daughter, and I have a niece, nephew, a bunch of cousins. I have a huge family, a bunch of young Black men. And it's like, you see the situation in Atlanta. What can you possibly, because people make mistakes. So what can you possibly do to stay out of harm's way in a way while we fight this situation? Because we can't rationally think right now. We know it's wrong. Unarmed Black men are being killed, but what can we do to protect our young? Those are tough conversations to have. So like I said, I have a daughter, and I worry about her.
Yeah, I have a 12 and 11-year-old. My biggest concern, I live in South San Jose. They go around the corner, leave this house. As my son gets older, he looks more teenager and more young Black male, or might fit that description, right? And so there's a big worry, right? My son says to me, Jeff, says, Dad, why when we're here, the police speak to you, but if we go someplace else, they don't speak to you? Said, well, they know me here and they don't know me there. So I have to have that conversation with him, that because we're here and the cops know who I am, there's a different way they will treat me. But when we leave this San Jose and we go to San Diego, it's a different treatment that I'll get from them. So I understand the fear, Dee, but we got to put the word out and keep this fire hot.
Excuse me, Kyle, you heard Dee say, though, that there's a line, that your silence, is kind of exposing. What if you're in the locker room or with your teammate and someone is just not comfortable, right? Not everybody is comfortable taking a side. Not everybody is comfortable speaking. Just what about that scenario? I mean, is it?
I think it's a tough scenario to deal with for sure. But I think, just speaking for our locker room, I think we've created a culture that is very open, and we're willing to listen to one another and hear each other out. And it's not, it's never a closed dialogue, and people give reason about the ways they feel, and we give them that platform and that time to speak. I think that we're lucky to be in a locker room to have that. It's fortunate for this group here, but I don't imagine that every locker room is like that. So it's tough. I don't know if I really have the answer for you on, that guy who, doesn't feel comfortable speaking out, or, maybe disagrees with something, but he just doesn't really want to get into it. He doesn't want to stir it up, and he doesn't want to go down that road. Really, I think that comes down to, on a personal level, and realizing just, what kind of weight we're all carrying right now, and what a difference we can make if we do take that leap and maybe put ourselves in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, I think with with guys who might feel uncomfortable, I think what you really got to ask yourself is why, if you are uncomfortable, really being able to support your brothers in that locker room. Well, why are you uncomfortable? You need to answer that question for yourself. Reverend Moore, he mentioned earlier about we all need to be the change. We have to be the change that we want to see in others. And so it obviously all starts on a personal level. And I said this back when we had that interview, Steve, talking about how it does start inward, and, doing your research. Because the more I've been able to read and watch the documentaries and watch the videos that I can to try and educate myself. Because before all this happened, I was one of those guys who stood in the back and was like, I don't want to get involved. But the more I realized that my silence was a part of the problem, that's when I started to do my own research and look things up. And I start to see that, there are a lot of things that are left out in those history books, in grade school when we're being brought up, and I'm starting to realize those things. And, it is very eye-opening. And in learning these things, it has made me want to learn more and use my voice even more, because obviously I feel like I have a responsibility, as a young Black man, and with the platform that I have being in the NFL, on a very big stage. I think that's important, is for me to be able to go out and talk to people and help educate them, and for them to realize that it does start inside, but I can't go and tell somebody else that if I don't do it, if I don't start with myself. And so that's why I feel like the biggest change for me has been is going out and researching it for myself and watching and reading as much as I can. So
What about the educational component? Because we just heard about Fred and the Reverend talk about reading and learning, and one of the greatest disparities we have in this country is the education. A lot of inner city schools and certain communities, whether they're out in rural Appalachia or Latin communities or Black communities, the resources are not given to a lot of these schools, so they can't afford. I mean, the one thing this COVID has exposed more than anything is a digital divide, right? The digital divide. There's a lot of people in the communities who don't have laptops, who don't have Wi-Fi, and could learn digitally. So now we're setting people back. As you guys as players, I mean, we've all grown up with different education systems and whatnot, but what about your role as educators? We're asking you a lot, right? Justice reform, voting, all of this. But educating, you heard the Reverend and people talk your voices. What can you do in that realm, whether it is to maybe address the digital divide, which is something the Players Coalition is trying to get its hands around, reading to kids, encouraging maybe kids from a white school to read Toni Morrison instead of Mark Twain, or asking kids from a predominantly Asian area to read some books about Cesar Chavez. And what are some of the things educationally we can do to open up the minds of our young people so they can be more empathetic to everybody's situations?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think doing things like right now is a good starting point. Having these roundtables to be able to talk about it, and hopefully it does reach enough minds where they're hearing us as players, thinking that all we do is play football and we're just athletes. But the fact that we're able to articulate and talk about these things, as adults and man to man, I think that's important. Being able to go out in the community and speak to children also, I feel like is very important. We have social media, which is very big. All the kids following us, all our followers. Just simply putting something on your Instagram story of something educational could go a long way, because people are constantly clicking on content that we post and that we put out there. So, just trying to find different avenues to be able to get the information out there that people need to, receive.
Kyle, how do you say your last name?
Juszczyk.
And where is that from?
That's from Poland.
Poland. So how much times have you read anything from Polish people or Polish authors to understand the Polish background? I'm just telling you this. You ask me how I do it. It's like I would go read or go when they have a holiday that celebrates a Polish holiday. I would go sit there if I could understand that, if I can see their culture, if I can taste their food, if I can experience. So then when I get to understand them more. See, and we sometimes have is a lack of understanding, or we have that understanding that is put to us on TV as that person fits this category. But when you read about the Polish struggle, you read about something different. And so I have this thing to get the knowledge. And so not to hurt, but to encourage and to support. So I would encourage you guys, again, I go back to your platforms. When you get on those platforms and talk about understanding and reading, I'm sorry, we're on education, but education, that's part of the education, the learning for yourself. And when you learn yourself, and more than anything, love yourself, you can then experience and love other cultures. And you don't see them as a threat.
Yeah, I will say so also. Just being from a Jamaican background, like I just know my mom teach me about Marcus Garvey, and me having just Haitian friends, and they teach me stuff about their culture and their education about how they fought for their freedom and their independence. So I just say just having it implemented in the educational system about different leaders, different Black leaders in the Black community, because I feel neglected with growing up. I never learned some of this stuff And some of my classmates didn't know about certain Black leaders that I had fortunate to learn about from my parents and stuff like that. So I think if it could just simply just, even if it's me starting a foundation or implement something in my own community that give younger Black kids an insight about different leaders and not just slavery, just about all the great things Black people have accomplished in this world, not only in the country.
Would you guys ever consider going to Kyle or John or Jed and say, hey, we've got these books, like let's share a book? I mean, I know you guys are super busy, especially like once you get in the season, but like have every player maybe come up with a book and that he likes, or and share a book. I mean, that seems like a simple way. Am I crazy here, D?
Nah, it's not crazy. Actually, my agent is very pro-Black.
Yes, he is.
He loves his history, and you'll be surprised how much on the daily we actually talk about these issues. And he teaches me a lot about our history. And I do feel like culturally, when it comes to education, I was ashamed to not really know a lot of the things that he was telling me. So I started studying up. He started sending me books, and it was actually the deeper we got, he actually stopped sending me books to our field house in Kansas City. He didn't want nobody to open up the package and see white fragility. You know what I mean? And it's all about right now. It's our comfort zone. I feel like right now we have to get out of our comfort zone, and I feel like it's in every culture, and really start to understand what's going on, because I feel like we're all screaming different things right now, and it's no understanding. And education is a big thing, and if you really start to dig deep into our history, you'll really start to understand that, like KK said, like K1 said, I feel neglected in a way, because the history we've been receiving since we were young is kind of generic. And I think that definitely has to change, because I feel like that plays into a part in our own culture, because I feel like it's a lot of work we have to do internally and externally, especially what's going on right now. But education is a big key, man, because it's a lot of lack of understanding, and we've kind of lost that purpose. And I feel like we have to regain that through education. And yes, I do be wanting to go to Kyle and John, and yeah, let's read White Fragility together. You know what I mean? It's because it sounds kind of crazy when you hear it, but it's not really
Right.
what you think once you start to read it and start to dig deep into it. I don't know if anybody ever seen Chelsea Handler's. She did a little show on white privilege, and where she actually sat down and had a conversation to white people about their own white privilege. And I thought that was so powerful, because we walk through life every day not really even knowing what we're doing. Once again, lack of education, lack of even knowing you have white privilege and what's going on with Black people and us ourselves. Let's be honest, we don't really react until something major happens. You know what I mean? It's just a lack of understanding. I feel like with more education, I feel like we can really get on board and really discover our purpose. I was watching a Black Panther documentary, and I was just like, man, it's so powerful, because they knew exactly what they were fighting for. I feel like right now, I don't think our coach, I know for sure our generation don't understand the complete history. It's all emotional right now. And I feel like if we could dig back like we once was, and back when we actually had a actual movement and leaders, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, there was a understanding, there was a purpose of what we were doing, and we bonded together to achieve that. The beautiful thing now is we have all races involved to do it, but it's going to start with education.
You know what, you said something all emotional, and K1, I want to come to you, and Kyle, if you can find emotions. Is it emotional that, are we on emotions like, okay, we need police reform? or is it something like we've been hearing about it for a long time, and now we've got a hook in the mouth of the fish because we saw it with George Floyd and we've seen it with Breonna Taylor? Is it emotional, or is it a different type of trigger that you think is kind of leading some of the conversation and some of the protests and things like that?
Just having going through COVID and having all eyes, nobody, everybody eyes attention on the media right now. I feel like that gave it a lot more traction and a lot more momentum to push forward with the movement that's going on now. So acting like, for me, it definitely was emotional at first, and then I had to back and see what can I do personally, what can I do to continue to fight and continue to progress for change. But at first, it was definitely emotional. Like, once you see something like that, a lynching like that, a modern day lynching on national news, on all media sites, of course, it's gonna stir up some emotion, and you're gonna want to do certain things or have negative thoughts. But for me, it's just more just educating myself on how am I gonna lead the way in my own community of just push forward and change.
No, I was gonna agree with Dee that I do feel like there are, and it's not everyone, but I think there is a lot of emotionally charged people who are just kind of I don't know, reacting with the masses. And I'll give an example of I feel like people, making decisions with emotions over education. So I went back home a week ago to Lafayette, Ohio, is where I grew up, and it's a country town, a lot of farms. Where I went to high school, I went to high school with 2 Black people my entire career there. We were 99% white, and I was at my nephew's birthday party. He turned 2 years old, and so we got a lot of family members there. Everybody that's there is white. Not a ton of interaction with Black people. And I think the number one question for distant family members who hadn't seen me in a while, their number one question was, how did I feel about Kaepernick and NFL players kneeling during the national anthem? And it was amazing how uneducated they were on it and how they were just reacting in emotion. And it was funny when we first brought the topic up, I could tell they were passionate about it. They were strongly, I don't understand how you could disrespect the flag. That was their emotional response. And I had to just slowly walk them through it and pound it in and said, listen, guys, that's not what it's about. And we've been saying it over and over, take your emotions out of it. It's not about disrespecting the flag. It has nothing to do with the military. And as I just continued to work that idea over with them and educate them on why Kaepernick started this and who influenced him to even do this and why we do it during the national anthem, that education, I could see it. It started to sink in, and I could see it in their eyes that some of that emotion was being driven back a little bit, and they started thinking about it. And by the end of the conversation, you could tell that they just had a much better understanding.
Well, salute to you for saying something, because a lot of folks would have just kind of let them have their emotions and kept them moving and grabbed the next drumstick.
Yeah, definitely. And so, it's funny because usually we were just talking about, the guy in the locker room who's scared to, speak up. He doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. He doesn't know when it's the right time to use his platform. So I felt like that was a time for me, and I'm surrounded by family members. So I felt comfortable, and I felt like this was a time that I can use my voice, that there's not a lot of times that they're sitting there with an NFL player, sitting around the campfire and get to ask me direct questions of what's going on. So much of what they know about me is just what they read online and what they see on ESPN and on Twitter, and they don't always get to ask me directly. So I just felt like this was an opportunity I couldn't miss, and I needed them to understand, and I wanted to educate my family members because I know they're getting those questions when they go to work. Hey, is your brother going to take a knee with his teammates? Hey, what does your brother think about this? And I didn't want them to, because I know sometimes my family, they're nervous to ask me these things because they don't want to put that burden on me. They whatever it is. But I wanted to give them that education and let them know how I feel so that they're well equipped when they go to work and people ask them, they say, you know what, I have an answer for you because I spoke to my brother directly about this. And then they can, and the education trickles down from there. And so kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, Steve, for that player who maybe doesn't feel comfortable speaking in a locker room, if you're able to just educate on the most basic level in your family, in your household, that can really, that can make a lot of change as well.
Reverend, could you let him know how it may not have seemed that big of a thing? That's like gravitational pull, because not a lot of people will speak, and then not a lot of family members will listen. That's a freaking huge step.
Huge.
It's huge. Go ahead, Dee.
I was just gonna, piggyback off what he was saying. Is I wish I had more teammates like Juice at the time when I was in Kansas City when Kaepernick first took a knee. And it was the same thing. I heard players say that, he's disrespecting the flag. He's disrespecting the flag. And Andy had to really actually tell us not to speak about it because players started to get mad and get agitated. And so I'll never forget, we decided before a game we actually played San Diego at the time, which was the Chargers. We played in San Diego, and we all decided to take a knee. And we took a knee during the national anthem, and the whole time, and I was surprised because we were in Cali, but the whole time you couldn't even hear the national anthem because 50,000 people were yelling, "Stand up, stand your A word up." And so it's definitely emotional and a lack of education and a lack of understanding as a result. And man, it's gonna take more people and that's what you're seeing now. So I said earlier that if you don't say nothing, you are the enemy today, because you're letting it ride. You're letting the narrative remain. Just like I was so glad it happened to Drew, and I know it probably didn't feel good for Drew, and he had to be an example, but people really don't understand what's going on with our culture. But we're all in this together. I think when it comes down to good things that go on in this country, we all take credit for that easily. But when it comes to injustices that's going on, it's like, it's almost like, that's y'all problem. You know what I mean? And it's definitely education and understanding. Just because it's not your culture in particular, you don't go silent and just, I guess, not help the situation. So it's definitely emotional. It's definitely emotional.
I want, it's funny because I'm going completely off purpose and script here, but because I'm here with some young people and we're talking about emotions, and we're talking about taking sides and bridging gaps, but it's a current event the discussion around has got my mind blown. I just want to hear from you young people on this. And this is Bubba Wallace, the NASCAR driver, right? The black NASCAR driver. So NASCAR comes out and says they found a device, or they found a noose in his garage. They call the FBI. FBI says it's been there for a while. This is not anything of ill intent. So now we have half of America say it was a hoax. It's Jussie Smollett. He did this himself to gain attention. You have other people saying it wasn't him who called the FBI. It was NASCAR who did this. And I just want to hear from you guys. And when we're talking about picking sides, because we have all kinds of issues going on in this world, and this is inflaming it right now. What you guys are thinking about this, and is there any way, because bridging even a conversation like that seems almost impossible. And I got to start with a guy down in Alabama, D, because you're in the teeth of it right now.
Yeah,
but
hey, look,
I just want to hear. I want to hear from you guys because I'm just so intrigued by. Are we serious right now?
I'll admit I was pissed, and I actually posted on social media And people who know me know I don't post on social media a lot. And I called whoever potentially did it a coward. And that the passive aggressive energy is not gonna scare anybody. Because if that was in fact true, all he was trying to do is provoke fear in Bubba. I think the crazy conversation, the question I have is, are we arguing the existence of a noose? Who walked by a noose for a year and a half? You know what I mean? Is that the culture? You see what I'm saying? Or it's a noose. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's enough right there. It's just not about who was right or you was wrong, and even it doesn't matter. It's a noose, and it wasn't hanging up like it was. I guarantee you, it wasn't hanging up like it was because somebody would have saw it. We got to use our common sense, man. And it pissed me off because I am from Alabama, and I'll be honest with you, they do want you to fear them in a way. Those who are that way, and this is not the world. That's why it made me emotional, and I don't want to sound hypocritical, but I was very emotional when I saw it because it was sickening. And it's just the fact that, are we really going to justify a noose? You know what I mean? So that's what we are, and we got to have that uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, I agree with Dee. I think Bubba Wallace might have even said it. Like whenever it was put there, at the end of the day, like there's a noose hanging there, and whether it was if it was supposed to be directed at him or somebody else, like how are we rationalizing that? It doesn't matter. Black, white, Asian, like if there's a noose, like there's some ill intent there. And for people to get upset about the way people came out in the race to support Bubba Wallace, and the message that was given out, and kind of stemmed from this noose being in Bubba's garage or wherever it was, like that it shouldn't take away from the positive or the positivity that came from it. Regardless of why it was there, something good came out of it. We saw people band together. We saw people supporting one another. So it's crazy to me that people can, find a way to, justify it not being, or that it was some sort of hoax or something.
Yeah, I think the question should be about like what is the culture of NASCAR and why, like we all talked about this entire time, like why was that in there in the first place? It's not about if Bubba was, if there was like a hoax about it or whatever, like when it was there, when it wasn't, like why was it there in the first place? And we all understand that. Well, people can argue like, oh, it's just a knot, like it's just the way you tie a rope, but like we all understand that there's a certain representation that knot. Exactly. That's it. Right. Exactly. Like, no, that's exactly.
Hey, I was born.
We all know that's not right. That's not. There's no way you can justify that. We know what that represents, and so, the fact that was in there, there's no room for it. You can't do that, and obviously, you need to question what the culture is in NASCAR and why that was there in the first place.
I just got a question for the group. I mean, for everybody here. Do y'all feel like I see some guys in the NBA deciding not to get back, like starting playing sports again? Like, I want to ask you guys, with us playing sports again, would it distract, the movement that's going on, or how would that help? I want to hear topics and.
I think it's tough. I think it's tough because you lose I feel like we have a platform, and in a way we lose it. But also, it can definitely, sports is overwhelming, especially when you get into the heat of good teams and chasing a championship. And, it's overwhelming, and it's hard to prioritize. People are gonna prioritize sports first because people want to be entertained, and I think that's what basketball players are saying. You ask someone to pick activism or entertainment, who do you think the majority is going to pick? They're going to pick entertainment. So it's tough for me. It's tough for me, bro.
I understand. I think it takes away from your time, like as an athlete, like, you know, in season, obviously, like you're just not gonna put as much time and energy into being an activist and that thing. But as far as a platform, I think that bringing sports back would only accentuate our platform, because I think that's just going to bring even more eyes to you and give you a chance, you know, in that post-game interview, all eyes are on you. You can say whatever you want. Right now, I mean, you could post anything you want, but you never know, you know, your followers will see it. But if, you know, you're in a post-game interview or on the field, anything like that, I just feel like you kind of elevate your platform and have more eyes on you. So I could see from both angles how, you know, it could pull from the amount of energy and resources you could put towards this stuff. But at the same time, I think you can hit a bigger audience just with more eyes on you.
I want to be controversial real quick. I feel like if more owners would actually speak, we could go back and play sports, and it not be an issue, because those are very powerful voices that can be used. You know what I mean? And it's going to be hard to revert to not getting anything done when owners actually speak. I feel like that's why NBA players are feeling like this is going to get lost, because the very important voices, they're not being used in a way. So I feel like if all owners, just imagine if everybody responded like NASCAR. Yes, we could go back and play sports. I feel like it would be an extension of what's going on. But I feel like you have some people who are 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
But D, Jed York has been very out front. Your owner has probably been the most out front owner in the NFL.
Look, I'm gonna have a hard time playing for another team. You know, I completely love this organization and how they stand by players and stand by movements, and it's just amazing because they don't have to do it. And trust, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, and I'm really talking more so the collective of the owners.
Fred, I want you to wrap this up for us, and that's to get back to K-Juan's point. Going back to football, does that take the focus off of the mission?
I think Juice put it pretty perfectly. Actually, I think that we can use playing football to our advantage, where we can voice our opinions about the matter in a larger way, in a larger platform. You know, there are going to be more eyes on us if we are playing football. You know, having the entire team stand in unity or take a knee in unity, during the national anthem, I think that obviously would that would do a lot. That's something that we can't do if we play football. And there's other things like you mentioned in the press conferences that we can talk about, if we choose to. But there is also the side of, okay, if we don't play football, that's also sending a very powerful message about how important this topic is and this movement has been. So, I think it's something to kind of think about and talk about like we are right now. And I'm sure I'm sure the league is leaning more towards obviously playing, but as players, I think it's something that we just got to continue to talk about.
Well said, gentlemen. Thank you guys so much. I mean, this is so. I love this watching you guys kind of talk, among each other, and Juice, telling us a story about him addressing his family, and the Reverend saying some of the things he said, and K-Juan, rice and peas. You're all about that.
You already know.
You got it. Well, thank you guys so much, man. Take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, guys. Good stuff.
Hey, fellas. Hold it down, fellas.
We'll see you later.
You already.
Yes, sir.